Today, we're talking about AI strategy. Almost every business realizes that they need a strong AI strategy. The best companies of the next 10 years are going to be those that use AI the most successfully. But there's a problem. Out of the hundreds of business leaders and entrepreneurs that I know, I'd estimate that 95% or more are getting their AI strategies wrong. They're either investing entirely in the wrong things or they're making really big bets on things that are very likely to fail. But after being in the AI and data industry for over 20 years, I know that the best companies invest in technology a very different way. They make careful bets so that they can increase their likelihood of success and compound their wins over time. So, in this video, I'm going to give you a clear step by step framework for making better decisions about where and how to invest in AI in your own business. Hi, I'm Joshua Ebner. I've been in the AI and data science industry for over 20 years, including at companies like Apple. I'm going to tell you everything that I know about AI strategy. Let's get to it. Okay, first, and this is really the center point of the entire strategy. I call this invest like Bezos. Let me explain. Many of the best technology leaders and VCs, I would add, use a sort of investing framework where they're, at least in the very beginning, making relatively small bets, and then they're trying to increase their certainty over time. We could call this something like conviction weighted betting. So when you're in an area where there's a lot of volatility, but potentially a very large upside, what you're trying to do is you're trying to reduce the uncertainty with your bets. So you start by making very small bets, partially to test things out and experiment, partially to gather more information. Now, that's not the whole story, and we're going to get to more things later on in the video, but this is a central piece of the strategic framework. So, a couple of points here. Number one, start small and learn fast. You want to run tight, relatively low cost experiments to discover what actually moves the needle. As we move through the video, I'm going to give you some more frameworks for where to place your bets. But for right now, this is a really good principle. Second, scale according to your conviction. So after you place these relatively small bets, you're trying to gather information from your experiments. You're trying to figure out what things are more or less likely to work. Your experiments will help you gather this information. Number three, you're going to keep and compound what works. When you find an experiment or a prototype that really works well, you're going to double, maybe even triple down on that. And number four, you're going to avoid moonshots. One of the biggest problems that I'm seeing among business leaders right now is that they are sometimes investing really big in things that have maybe a low probability of working. Now, they don't understand that, and that's one of the things that we're going to try and solve with some of the next steps of our framework. But the key point here is that you are trying to avoid over betting on things that are still somewhat uncertain. By the way, if you really want to use AI in your business, you're going to need to figure out if you're ready for AI. That being said, go take my AI readiness assessment. You can find the link in the description. Click on the link. It's only a few questions. It'll take you less than 5 minutes, and it'll tell you if your business is ready for AI, and if not, where your gaps are. Click on the link and go take the AI readiness assessment right now. So, the core of building a great AI strategy is making bets on things where you have higher certainty, making small bets when you have low certainty. And one of the keys to doing this right is having enough knowledge and information about the different techniques and different potential use cases, how those things work, and so on. So that brings us to our next point. One of the things that I recommend that you invest in most as you build your AI strategy is education, both for your leaders and for your employees, since it'll make it much, much easier to make educated bets and increase your likelihood of winning. So there's a couple of things that you're going to need to understand. Number one, you're going to need to understand the different types of AI. Many business leaders think that there's only one type of AI, generative AI, and they sort of conflate large language models and ChatGPT style systems with AI on the whole. That's a little bit inaccurate. There's actually many different types of AI. We have predictive AI for making predictions about things, forecasting, predicting certain types of behaviors like churn. There's exploratory AI for finding patterns in data. That's just a clever name for something that we call unsupervised learning. There's generative AI. That's large language models and similar systems like ChatGPT. And then you have agentic AI, which is built using generative tools, but it's different enough that I consider it to be its own thing. And those are just the four main types. There are other types like computer vision and other things. So you need to understand the major types of AI, their strengths and weaknesses, the sorts of trade-offs that you're going to be making with different algorithms, how each type solves certain types of business problems to generate business value, and so on. Now, at the highest levels, you might not need to know all the technical details, but you and your team should have a basic fluency in a lot of the major concepts. That includes things like, as I said, the different types of AI, but also what is model training, what is model fine tuning, and how is it different from training. You should know a little bit about inference and how inference works. You should know a little bit about AI ops or machine learning ops. That's essentially deployment and so on. Again, not everyone in the business needs to know all of the technical details around that, although you should have some people that know some of the technical details. But at the very least, leaders and executives should have a conceptual understanding of a lot of these different areas. The more you know, the better decisions you will be able to make as you build out your strategy. Remember, with almost everything that we're doing, we're trying to get more information that enables us to make better decisions. Education should be central to that. And once you and your team have a basic high level understanding of a lot of the core concepts in AI, you're still going to want to have people that have some technical expertise. And that brings us to our next point. You need to build serious AI talent. A lot of companies, when they think about AI talent, they're thinking about things like prompting, teaching people how to write better prompts. Prompting is part of it, but you're going to need a lot more than just prompting if you want to build serious AI systems that drive business value. So, a couple of things that you should be focusing on. You're going to want people in your company that have some expertise with data, since data is a major part of almost every AI system. We're going to get to that in a minute. You'll want people that understand AI and machine learning. Remember, almost all modern artificial intelligence is based on machine learning. I've talked about this in past videos, and it's something that I'm going to continue talking about. Machine learning is teaching systems how to perform better on tasks by exposing them to data. Almost every AI system that you're using today was built using machine learning techniques. All of the AI experts at OpenAI and Google and Meta, they are really at their core, they're machine learning experts. And one of the secrets here is that if you want to use AI successfully inside of a business, you're going to need some machine learning expertise in your own business. And the reason is that many types of AI, in order to work in specific workflows or to solve very specific tasks inside of a business, they actually either need to be fully trained kind of from the ground up. That's true for things like predictive models in many cases. Or if you're just taking an off the shelf AI tool, something like a ChatGPT, and you want to deploy it inside of a workflow in your business, you probably need to train it a little bit more. There's a name for this. We call this fine tuning. And fine tuning is ultimately a type of machine learning. So you're going to want people inside of your business that have some technical capabilities in machine learning. Okay, so we've got data, we've got machine learning. You'll want some people that have some deployment expertise. We would call that AI ops or machine learning ops. And then you'll want some people that have some expertise with things like measurement. Now, every business is going to be a little bit different. In some cases, you'll want to build that internally. Other times, you might be able to hire that out with a consulting firm. But I will say the more internal capabilities you have, the better decisions you'll be able to make about when and how to deploy. Remember, one of the centerpieces of our framework is trying to increase our knowledge of the problem space and of the difficulty of particular use cases such that we can make better bets over time. And it should be obvious that having people with serious talent inside of your organization or close to it will help you do that. Another part of building talent inside of your organization is hiring a chief AI officer. Now, some companies might need a full-time chief AI officer. Others might be able to get away with a fractional chief AI officer, a CIO. But one way or another, you're going to want somebody at an executive level that understands things like data, AI, machine learning, a lot of the technical things, but then also the business side. So how all those different tools and techniques, how do they solve specific business problems? How do they drive business value? You ultimately need somebody that understands the business side and the technical side well enough to advise the other major leaders inside the organization. One more point here. I will admit that hiring people with these skills is very challenging right now. There's kind of a lack of people with serious AI and machine learning skill, certainly at the frontline level, but hiring a chief AI officer is even more difficult because they need both the technical side and the business side. But a couple ways of getting around this, if you're finding it difficult to hire people with those skills, is to hire people maybe fractionally or as consultants, or alternatively, upskilling people inside of your business. So if you have, let's say, some software engineers that maybe understand data a little bit, you might be able to get those people some education that upskills them into the roles you need. You might be able to turn a software engineer into something like a machine learning engineer or an AI engineer. You might be able to turn a CTO, somebody that already has pretty good technical understanding of things like software and maybe some data, and maybe upskill them or cross skill them with some AI and machine learning knowledge that will turn them into something more like a chief AI officer. Now, having people in your business that understand AI and data and machine learning, this is very important for building an AI strategy. But there's actually a separate piece, and it's important enough that I'm going to break it out into its own section, and that's having subject matter experts. This is very frequently forgotten, but arguably the first or second most important person in any AI project is a subject matter expert. Let's say you're trying to solve an important problem in your business, like customer retention. The AI and data team aren't always going to have subject matter expertise in that area. And you're going to need let's say, a marketing or a retention expert inside of your business that does understand that problem. And they're going to need to work together. You're going to need this for things like data labeling, data cleaning. In many cases, the AI and machine learning talent, they're going to need to build out data sets that enable them to train or tune AI systems to be able to solve particular problems. And the person that knows how to clean that data correctly, how to label the data properly, that's going to be the subject matter expert. Furthermore, let's say you already have some AI systems built, or you have some off the shelf systems that you want to use, like a ChatGPT. What I've been noticing is that if you are an amateur in a particular skill area, you don't know very much, it's very difficult to construct specific, well formulated prompts to something like a large language model such that you can get a really good answer in response. So let me give you a really quick example. I started asking ChatGPT some questions about AI and machine learning. I was trying to solve a problem, and I just wanted to solve that problem a little bit faster using ChatGPT as a productivity tool. When I asked it in a very simple way with only a couple of sentences, it gave me a very bad response. And I knew that it was a bad response because I was an expert in the area that I was asking about. What I needed to do was construct a much longer prompt with a lot more context and a lot more external information. And once I did that, ChatGPT gave me a much better answer. Here's the problem. I was only able to construct that prompt because I'm already an expert. So this is maybe a much larger conversation, but I will say that subject matter experts are the best people at using things like large language models and copilots because they're able to construct and engineer the best prompts that get the best answers. So you should be thinking very carefully about either keeping or acquiring more subject matter expertise. Those individuals will be the best at using AI systems once they're constructed. One more thing, subject matter experts are also really important for creating testing and evaluation. So anytime you're building an AI system, you're going to need to test and evaluate its performance. Just like you need a subject matter expert to help you clean up and generate good inputs for an AI system, you also need a subject matter expert to verify and help you evaluate the outputs of those systems. So once again, end to end, whether you're talking about building an AI system, using an AI system, or validating and testing the outputs, subject matter expertise is absolutely critical. And having those experts on staff are going to help you and your team make much better decisions about where to invest. They will understand the places where you have the best data and you have the highest likelihood of a successful system. Now, once you have an understanding of AI and you have key people in place, you're still going to need to invest in something else to have a successful AI strategy, and that's data. Nearly every type of AI, predictive, exploratory AI, generative AI, AI agents, almost everything needs data in one form or another. Now, I will say that different types of AI need different types of data. In many cases, generative AI are enhanced by having things like documents put into a vector database. Alternatively, something like predictive AI typically needs structured data. That's not the full story, but it's generally true. one of the best bets that you can make is investing in cleaning up and centralizing your data so that it's ready for AI systems to use. It should be noted that in the previous AI wave, really the machine learning wave of the 2010s, data was king. And that was true at places like Google and Facebook and Amazon. That was true 10 years ago, and it's still true today. In this new AI wave, just to kind of reinforce the point, Andrew Ng, who is one of the godfathers of modern artificial intelligence, professor at Stanford, an entrepreneur, he's literally one of the most famous people in the industry. He recently said in a talk that the importance of data engineering is rising for artificial intelligence. This was one of his four main points. So if Andrew Ng, one of the godfathers of artificial intelligence, is saying that data engineering is one of the most important things, you should be listening. So if you want to build a solid AI strategy, you need to start thinking about your data and your data strategy. And once you have a data plan and you have your key people in place and everyone is educated about the modern tools and techniques, you're going to want to do the next thing, and that's identify use cases. Now, you're not going to treat every potential use case the same. Remember the core of our strategic framework. We're trying to place bets on things that have a high probability of working, and we're trying to scale the size of our bet with that probability. So if you have a use case where you're really unsure whether or not it's going to work, at best, you're going to make a very small bet. If you're much more certain about whether or not a use case is going to work out and you're going to be able to solve it with AI, you'll make a much larger bet. And everything that we've talked about so far, getting education, getting subject matter experts, getting serious AI and machine learning talent, all of those things are going to improve your ability to identify the highest versus the lowest probability use cases. Having said that, here's a couple of major points to help you prioritize. First, try to target measurable return on investment. You want to identify use cases where there's a clear metric that you're trying to drive, and you want that metric to connect to some sort of business goal. Typically, we're looking for some sort of connection to revenue increases, cost decreases, risk reduction, higher customer satisfaction, and so on. Second, you want to bet on things first where you have a lot more clarity. So try to start with problems where you have a lot more clarity around the problem before tackling speculative or moonshot bets. The next point, you typically want to prioritize areas where you already have clean, rich data. As I said previously, almost all AI systems, whether you're building a generative AI system to tackle a specific workflow problem or you're building a predictive system, you typically need data for those things. So you want to try and focus on problems where you already have the data. And finally here, you want to focus on things that can improve customer satisfaction, acquisition, and retention. Now, why is that? If you can improve customer satisfaction, customer acquisition, and retention, this helps you create a sort of AI data flywheel. I've talked about this in a past video, but essentially what we're doing here is we're trying to increase satisfaction, acquisition, and retention because that helps us get or keep more customers. And if we get or keep more customers, if you do it right and you instrument your products correctly, that helps you get more data. And once you get more data, that opens up a whole new set of use cases. This helps you build more AI systems, which then help you get more data, and the flywheel spins faster and faster. After we've identified our use cases, you're at the final step, and that's what I call prototype, then kill or scale. So in almost every AI project, you want to start with a prototype. You want to treat these prototypes like experiments. Remember, again, we're typically trying to make relatively small bets in the beginning. We are trying to prioritize use cases that have a higher probability of success, and we will make somewhat larger bets when we think we have a higher probability. But one of the best ways of increasing your likelihood of success is to simply get more information. So we're going to start with a prototype to try and get a sense of how difficult a problem is to solve. Sometimes you build a prototype and you just keep running into walls, or you find out you thought you had the right data, but in fact, you don't. Or maybe you can solve the problem with the resources and data you have, but maybe it turns out that it's a little bit too expensive. It's better to find that information out with a prototype than in something that you've overinvested in. So we're trying to build a prototype to get that information up front, get a sense of how hard the problem is. If a problem is too difficult or it's not working out or it's going to be too costly, you kill the prototype. But if you build the prototype, you run the experiment, and you find out that You can build it with the resources you have. It's not going to be too expensive. It is going to drive some important metric, like I talked about in the past. Then you're going to scale it out. You will build the full system and then deploy it. So we're effectively prototyping cheap and fast, getting a sense of how hard the problem is, getting more information, and then scaling up only once it proves itself. So once you've built that foundation, having a good understanding of AI, getting the right people in place, you've got your use cases, your prototypes, your smart bets. That's the foundation of your AI strategy that will enable you to repeatably build systems that drive business value. But the next step is turning that into a compounding business advantage. And that's where the AI data flywheel really comes into effect. It's a system where your data, your AI systems, and your customers begin to reinforce each other. If you want to understand more about that, check out this next video on the AI data flywheel right here.